Welcome, dear traveler, to this gentle journey through the eternal branches of Yggdrasil, the world tree that holds all existence in its ancient embrace. Tonight, we will wander together through realms both distant and near, through spaces that exist between waking and sleeping, between the known world and the mysteries that dwell in the roots and branches of the cosmos itself. This is a long journey we undertake together, one that will carry you through the entire night, through cycles of rest and deeper rest, through stories within stories, all woven together like the branches of the great ash tree itself. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from tonight, whether you rest beneath northern stars or southern skies, in cities where lights never fully dim, or in quiet places where darkness comes complete and total. Wherever you are welcome here in this space we create together, this sanctuary of story. Here on Boring Mythology, we tell the old tales in the old way, slowly, gently, letting them unfold like moonflowers opening in the darkness. As you settle into your place of rest, let the weight of the day begin to lift from your shoulders, dissolving like morning mist rising from still water. Feel how the bed or chair holds you, how gravity becomes a gentle friend rather than a burden, drawing you down into comfort, into safety, into the embrace of night. The journey we take tonight requires no effort from you, no struggle, no striving. You need only listen, and even that listening can soften, can blur at the edges, can become something more like floating than following. Close your eyes if they aren't already closed, and begin to see with that inner sight that knows things beyond the reach of ordinary vision. See how the darkness behind your eyelids isn't truly dark at all, but filled with subtle colors that shift and flow like the northern lights across an endless winter sky. These are the colors of beginning, the hues of potential, the shades of stories not yet told, but always waiting to be discovered. In this darkness that is not darkness, you begin to perceive something vast, something that has always been there, but which ordinary sight cannot capture. It rises before you like a mountain, like a tower, like a bridge between earth and sky. Yet it is none of these things and all of them at once. This is Yggdrasil, the world tree, the axis upon which all existence turns, and tonight you will come to know it not as a concept or a symbol, but as a living presence, ancient beyond measure, yet eternally renewed. Feel how the very air changes as we approach this cosmic tree. It becomes denser, richer, laden with the scent of bark that has weathered infinite seasons, of leaves that have captured the light of suns long extinguished and suns yet to be born. There is moisture in this air, the perpetual mist that rises from the three great wells at Yggdrasil's roots, each well holding different waters, different wisdoms, different weights of fate and time. The tree reveals itself slowly to your inner vision, not all at once, but in layers, in impressions, in moments of clarity that come and go like memories of dreams. First, you sense its trunk, massive beyond comprehension, its bark rough and deeply grooved, creating valleys and ridges that could shelter entire worlds. The texture speaks of endurance, of standing firm while everything else changes, of being the one constant in a universe of variables. Run your phantom fingers along this bark and feel how it contains every texture you've ever known. Rough as stone, smooth as water-worn wood, warm as sun-heated earth, cool as shadow. Above, The branches spread in patterns that follow no earthly logic, yet make perfect sense to that part of you that dreams. They reach not just upward, but in all directions, including directions that have no names in waking speech. Some branches are thick as mountains, supporting entire realms upon their wooden backs. Others are delicate as spider silk, yet strong enough to hold the weight of destiny itself. The leaves rustle with a sound like whispered secrets, like distant ocean waves, like the breathing of sleeping giants. 9 realms rest within and upon this tree, each one a complete world with its own laws, its own light, its own way of being. Tonight, we will visit them all, not as tourists or conquerors, but as dream travelers, moving through them like wind through leaves, taking in their essence without disturbing their eternal processes. We will map them softly in the mind, these 9 chambers of existence, each one necessary, each one part of the greater whole that is reality itself. At the roots of the great tree, 3 wells bubble and surge with waters that are not quite water, that are older than the concept of liquid, older than the distinction between elements. Urðr, the well of fate, where the Norns sit weaving, always weaving, creating the patterns that guide all things. Mímir, the well of wisdom, whose waters carry the price of knowledge, the weight of understanding. And Hvergelmir, the spring of springs, from which all rivers flow, the source that feeds the source. The tree is never alone, never still, never simply a structure. It is a living world, a vertical universe, and creatures make their homes throughout its vastness. In the highest branches, an eagle sits with eyes that see all things, while between its eyes perches a hawk whose vision penetrates even deeper mysteries. 4 deer move through the branches like thoughts through a dreaming mind, feeding on the leaves, pruning the new growth, maintaining the eternal balance. And far below, in the darkness beneath the roots, the dragon Níðhöggr gnaws eternally, not in malice but in necessity, breaking down what must be broken down, composting existence itself so that new growth can emerge. Above all this, crossing the sky in paths worn smooth by eternal repetition, the sun and moon pursue their courses. Not the sun and moon as modern minds know them, distant balls of gas and rock, but Sól and Máni, the bright ones, forever fleeing, forever pursued, their chase creating the rhythm of days and nights, of months and seasons, of time itself as mortals understand it. Their quiet chase across the sky is both desperate and graceful, terrifying and beautiful, a dance that must never end lest all existence freeze in eternal twilight. And connecting it all, shimmering like the reflection of light on water, stretches Bifröst, the rainbow bridge, though rainbow is too small a word for what this bridge truly is. It is the path between states of being, the connection between what is solid and what is spirit. The ribbon of dawn that appears each morning not as mere atmospheric phenomenon, but as promise, as possibility, as the eternal reminder that boundaries can be crossed, that separate worlds can touch. The Norns, those 3 sisters who are not quite sisters, who are both less and more than goddesses, sit at their well beneath the tree's roots, their fingers always moving, always weaving. The threads they work with are not wool or silk, but the stuff of fate itself, each strand a life, a choice, a moment that connects to all other moments. They weave not because they are commanded to, not because they choose to, but because weaving is what they are. The threads of gentle fate flow through their fingers like water, like time, like the breath you're taking right now, slow and deep, and perfect. And through all of this, beneath and above and within all of it, time turns its great wheel. Not the sharp mechanical time of clocks and calendars, but the soft time of seasons, the gentle time of growth and rest, the eternal time that knows no haste. The cosmos has its seasons just as Midgard does, though these seasons last eons, ages, eternities. Spring comes to the universe, and summer, autumn, winter, each one necessary, each one perfect in its time, the slow turning that keeps all existence fresh, that prevents the stagnation that would come from eternal sameness. All of this awaits us tonight, dear traveler. All of this and more, for Yggdrasil contains everything that was, everything that is, everything that might be. We will journey through each realm like smoke through rooms, present but not intrusive, observing but not disturbing. We will follow the deer through the branches, dive with Níðhöggr through the roots, cross Bifröst in the quiet hours before dawn. We will sit with the Norns and watch them weave, though watching their work is like trying to follow every drop of rain in a storm, possible only in glimpses, in moments of partial understanding that are somehow more satisfying than complete knowledge would be. The journey begins now, in this moment, as you sink deeper into rest, as your breathing naturally slows to match the rhythm of the great tree's ancient pulse. For Yggdrasil breathes too, in breaths that last centuries, in exhalations that create winds between worlds, in inhalations that draw all things back toward the center, toward the source, toward the mystery that lives at the heart of the tree, at the heart of existence, at the heart of every story ever told. The mapping begins not with names, but with sensations, with the feeling of space opening before you, like a flower blooming in impossible directions. First, there is darkness, the primal darkness that exists before distinction, before separation, before the very idea of different places. In this darkness, you float, weightless, timeless, held in the embrace of potential. Then, slowly, like dawn creeping across an endless horizon, differences begin to emerge. Not sharp boundaries, but gentle gradations, places where the darkness thickens or thins, warms or cools, quickens or slows. First, the sensation of roots beneath, massive and gnarled, creating caves and hollows where shadows gather like old friends, sharing ancient secrets. The wood here is damp with the moisture of the deep earth, with the waters that seep up from sources too profound to name. The smell is rich, loamy, speaking of decomposition and regeneration, of endings that are beginnings, of the eternal cycle that turns beneath all things. This is the realm of roots, where Helheim waits in patient silence, where the dragon gnaws, where the wells bubble with their different wisdoms. Then the awareness lifts, rises through the bark-rough trunk, and finds the middle spaces, the realms that cluster around Yggdrasil's mighty center like children around a grandmother telling stories. Here the air moves differently, carries different weights, different lights. To one side, there is warmth, a golden glow that speaks of harvest fields and hearth fires, of human voices raised in song, of the particular courage required to live knowing that life ends. This is Midgard, the middle enclosure, neither high nor low, neither fully matter nor fully spirit, the realm of balance, of choice, of the eternal now that mortals inhabit. But Midgard is not alone in these middle spaces. Turn your inner vision slightly, like adjusting your eyes to see through water, and another realm emerges, overlapping yet distinct. Here the light is different, clearer, like morning sunshine through crystal. The air tastes of apples, of gold, of laughter that never grows stale. Alfheim spreads before you, the realm of the light elves, though elves is a word that carries too much weight from later stories, too many assumptions. These beings are light itself given consciousness, joy itself given form, and their realm reflects this. All brightness without harshness, all beauty without vanity. Shift again, and the light changes once more, becomes the steady glow of forge fires, the honest light of making, of creation through will and skill and patient work. Svartalfheim opens its caverns and workshops, where the dwarves who are not quite dwarves as stories tell them pursue their eternal crafts. The sound here is rhythmic, metal on metal, stone on stone, the percussion of creation that never ceases. The air carries the scent of hot metal, of stone dust, of the sweat of honest labor that produces wonders. Another shift, and darkness returns, but not the primal darkness of beginning. This is the deliberate darkness of those who choose shadow, who find in it not absence but presence of a different kind. This is the realm of the dark elves, the Dukkalfa, whose nature remains mystery even to those who study mysteries. Their darkness is velvet, tactile, something you can almost touch, almost taste. It moves like liquid, like thought, like the space between heartbeats where anything might happen. Rise higher now, following the trunk as it ascends toward regions where the air grows thin and strange, where ordinary thought begins to bend and refract. Here, where the branches begin their vast spreading, where the eagle sits watching all things, the upper realms reveal themselves in glory and terror, in beauty that borders on the unbearable. The first glimpse is of rainbow light, of every color and colors that have no names, dancing, shimmering, alive with a vitality that makes mortal life seem like sleep by comparison. This is Asgard, the enclosure of the Aesir, the gods who are not quite gods as later religions would define them, but forces, principles, personalities, vast enough to wear the cosmos like a garment. Their realm shines not with reflected light, but with light generated from within, from the very substance of divinity itself. Here, great halls rise like mountains carved from single gems, and the air itself seems to sing with power, with purpose, with the weight of responsibilities that span ages. Connected to Asgard by bridges both visible and invisible, sites Vanaheim, realm of the Vanir, the other tribe of divine beings whose nature is older, earthier, more connected to the cycles of growth and decay, of fertility and harvest, of the magic that lives in soil and seed. Where Asgard shines with sharp clarity, Vanaheim glows with a softer luminescence, like fireflies in a summer garden, like phosphorescence on night waves. The boundary between these realms is peace itself made manifest, a treaty written not in words, but in the very structure of reality. At the edges of the ordered realms, where the tree's influence begins to thin, where chaos licks at the borders of creation like a tide that never quite recedes, two realms stand as opposite extremes, defining the boundaries of what can exist within Yggdrasil's embrace. To one side, Muspelheim blazes with the first fire, the fire that existed before the tree, before the worlds, before the very concept of fuel or burning. This is not fire as mortals know it, not mere oxidation, not simple heat and light. This is the principle of fire, the idea of consumption and transformation, of energy that cannot be contained, cannot be tamed, can only be temporarily directed. The beings here are flame given form, thought moving at the speed of ignition, and their realm dances with colors that hurt to perceive even with inner vision, colors too pure, too primal for minds shaped by gentler lights. And opposite, in a balance that keeps all existence from tilting too far toward either extreme, Niflheim spreads its ancient ice, its primordial cold, its mists that obscure and reveal in equal measure. This cold is not the mere absence of heat, but a presence in itself, a force as active as fire, but moving in different directions. Toward stillness rather than motion, toward preservation rather than transformation. The ice here remembers everything, holds the memory of every moment since before moments began, and in its depths, shapes move that might be reflections, might be memories, might be prophecies of things that will never quite come to pass. 9 realms in all, though the number 9 is itself a kind of magic, a way of organizing infinity into comprehensibility. Each realm contains countless sub-realms, pockets, and provinces. Each tree branch might hold a world too small for gods to notice, but vast as universes to its inhabitants. Each piece of bark might shelter civilizations that rise and fall between one of Yggdrasil's great breaths and the next. The map that forms in your mind is not like any map drawn on parchment or displayed on screens. It is a living map, a map that changes even as you perceive it. Because the 9 realms are not static places, but dynamic processes, constantly influencing each other, flowing into each other at the edges like watercolors bleeding into wet paper. Alfheim's light seeps into Midgard at dawn and dusk. Helheim's shadows reach up through the roots to touch all realms in moments of ending. The fire of Muspelheim and the ice of Niflheim meet and remix at the edges of existence, creating new possibilities, new impossibilities, new ways for reality to express itself. As you hold this map in your mind, feel how it has weight, how it pulls at your consciousness in different directions. Each realm calls with its own gravity, its own promise, its own particular beauty or terror. Midgard calls with familiarity, with the comfort of the known. Asgard calls with the promise of transcendence, of rising above mortal limitations. Helheim calls with the peace of ending. The rest that comes after all striving ceases. Each call is true. Each pull is real, yet you remain centered, held at the heart of the tree where all realms meet, where all possibilities coexist without conflict. The roots of Yggdrasil reach down through Helheim, through the very foundations of existence, to drink from the 3 wells that feed all reality. Feel these roots now, vast as mountain ranges, tunneling through dimensions that have no names. They move slowly, so slowly that stone seems hasty by comparison, yet they move constantly, always seeking, always drinking, always carrying the waters of wisdom and fate upward through the tree's immeasurable trunk. In Helheim, the roots create a landscape of wooden valleys and caverns, spaces where the dead who are not warriors gather in quiet contemplation of their existence, neither punished nor rewarded, simply being in a different way than they were before. The goddess Hel rules here, half living, half dead, perfectly balanced between states, and her realm reflects this balance. It is neither the paradise nor torment that later stories would make it, but simply another way of being, necessary as winter, peaceful as deep sleep. The roots twist and turn through this realm, and where they touch the ground, strange plants grow that need no sunlight, that feed on memory rather than light, that bloom with flowers made of condensed time, beautiful in ways that living eyes cannot quite process. The dead tend these gardens sometimes, not from obligation, but from a kind of gentle habit, the way one might straighten a picture frame while passing, not because it matters, but because the action itself has a small, quiet satisfaction. As the map continues to form, to solidify yet remain fluid, you begin to understand that the 9 realms are not just places, but states, not just locations, but conditions. Muspelheim is not just where fire lives, but what fire is. Niflheim is not just where ice waits, but what waiting itself means. Each realm embodies principles that extend far beyond their apparent boundaries, rippling out through all existence in waves subtle and profound. The middle realms cluster around the trunk like notes in a chord, each distinct yet harmonizing with the others. Midgard, Alfheim, Svartalfheim, and the realm of the Dark Elves create a kind of balance, a center that holds while the extremes pull at the edges of creation. Here, in these middle spaces, most of existence unfolds, most stories are told, most choices are made that ripple up and down the tree, affecting all realms in ways seen and unseen. Feel how Midgard especially serves as a kind of fulcrum, a balance point where all forces meet and mix. Humans, neither fully material nor fully spiritual, neither immortal nor as brief as mayflies, inhabit a unique position in the cosmic order. They alone among the beings of the 9 realms can choose to travel between states, can aspire to Asgard or sink to Helheim, can embrace the light of Alfheim or the shadows of darker realms. This choice, this freedom that is also a burden, makes Midgard central despite its apparent insignificance compared to the divine realms above or the primal realms at the edges. The map continues to build, layer upon layer, like sediment settling in still water, like memories accumulating in a long life. Vanaheim reveals itself more fully, showing forests that seem to breathe, waters that flow upward as easily as down, fields where the grain grows backward into seed when the need arises. The Vanir who dwell here move through their realm like dancers through familiar steps, their magic older and earthier than the bright sorcery of the Aesir, rooted in growth and decay, in the cycles that govern all life. Between Vanaheim and Asgard, the connections multiply, bridges and paths, some bright as the rainbow bridge, others subtle as the path between sleeping and waking. These connections tell the story of ancient conflicts resolved, of wisdom hard-won through war and peace, of the understanding that opposition can become cooperation without either side surrendering its essential nature. The treaty between these realms is written into the very structure of the tree, carved not in runes, but in the grain of the wood itself. Jotunheim emerges at the edges of perception, the realm of giants who are not always giant, of forces too primal to be contained within neat categories of good or evil, order or chaos. This realm defies mapping in the conventional sense because it exists partially outside the tree while also being essential to it. The giants represent what existed before the current order, what will exist after, what always exists alongside the structured realms as reminder and threat and promise all at once. Their lands shift like storms, mountains walking, valleys opening and closing like breathing lungs, nothing stable except the instability itself. The map in your mind now encompasses all 9 realms, yet it also shows the spaces between them, the boundaries that are not walls, but membranes, permeable under the right conditions, at the right times, for the right travelers. These between spaces have their own qualities, their own inhabitants sometimes, beings that belong fully to neither realm they border, existing in the margins like notes between musical scales, necessary for the full harmony, even if they don't appear in the simple notation. As this first great mapping completes itself, you feel how the 9 realms breathe together, despite their differences, despite their conflicts. They breathe with Yggdrasil's rhythm, that slow, deep respiration that measures time in ages rather than moments. The inhale draws energy up from the roots, from the wells, from the primal forces at the edges of existence. The exhale sends that energy flowing through branches, through leaves, falling like rain that is not water, but possibility itself, feeding all the realms, keeping them vital, keeping them real, keeping them distinct yet connected. And now, with the map glowing softly in your inner vision, we turn our attention downward to where the great roots disappear into depths that light has never touched, where 3 wells wait with their different waters, their different wisdoms, their different weights of destiny. The descent begins as all true descents must, not with falling, but with a gentle spiraling, like smoke reversing its course, like water finding its way back to the source. The mapped realms above fade without disappearing, remaining present in memory, while attention shifts to what lies beneath, to what feeds all that rises above. The air grows heavier here, thick with moisture that is older than rain, older than the concept of water cycle, older than the distinction between liquid and vapor. Your awareness follows a single root at first, one among the 3 great roots that anchor Yggdrasil to the foundations of existence itself. This root is vast as a mountain range turned on its side, its surface rough with bark that has never known smoothness, carved with patterns that might be runes, might be scars, might be the natural whirls and grooves that wood develops over eons of slow growth. The root descends through layers of reality that have no names, through substrata of existence that predate the very concept of layers. As you follow this root deeper, the first sound reaches you, not through ears, but through bones, through the very structure of your being. It is the sound of water that is more than water, a bubbling, surging, whispering sound that carries within it the echo of every word ever spoken, every word that will be spoken, every word that might have been spoken if choices had fallen differently. This is the approach to the first well, though first implies an order that doesn't quite exist here, where all 3 wells have always existed, will always exist, are always beginning to exist. The root terminates, or rather transforms, spreading into countless smaller roots that web outward and downward, like thoughts becoming dreams, like dreams becoming memories. And there, in a hollow that is simultaneously vast as an ocean and intimate as a cupped palm, the well of Urðr reveals itself, the well of fate. Though fate is too simple a word for what dwells in these waters. This is the well, where what has been becomes what must be, where past crystallizes into pattern, where the threads of existence are washed clean of possibility and fixed into actuality. Around this well, the air shimmers with a quality that makes everything seem both absolutely clear and completely mysterious. You can see every detail with perfect precision, the way the water surface trembles without wind, the way light that has no source reflects from depths that have no bottom. Yet the more clearly you see, the less you understand in the usual way of understanding. This is knowledge that bypasses thought, that settles directly into being like sediment in still water. 3 figures sit beside the well, have always been sitting beside the well, will always be sitting beside the well. The Norns, those weavers of fate who are not quite goddesses, not quite giants, not quite anything that fits into the neat categories that minds create to manage mystery. Urðr, Verdandi, and Skuld, though their names are less important than their functions, and their functions are less important than their presence, which is the presence of time itself, given form just enough to be perceived, not enough to be truly comprehended. They do not look up as you approach, for approach implies movement. And here, all movement has already happened, is happening, will happen. Their fingers work with threads that are not quite threads, that are visible only in the corner of vision, that disappear when looked at directly, but leave after images that tell more truth than direct observation ever could. What they weave is not cloth, but connection, not pattern, but the thing that allows pattern to exist. Urðr, whose name means what has become, works with threads that seem heavy, saturated with the weight of accomplished fact. Her fingers move with the certainty of stone settling into its final position, of water finding its level, of death claiming what has lived. Yet there is no sadness in her work, no regret, only the profound peace of completion, of stories that have found their endings and can rest in the satisfaction of conclusion. Verdandi, what is becoming, handles threads that shimmer with presentness, with the eternal now that is always slipping away, yet always arriving. Her work is quickest, her fingers dancing like flame, like thought, like the moment of decision that collapses possibility into actuality. The threads in her hands are warm, almost alive, pulsing with the heartbeat of the immediate, the urgent, the perpetually present. Skuld, what shall become, draws threads from somewhere that is not quite anywhere, from the reservoir of potential that surrounds all actual things like dark matter surrounds visible stars. Her threads are transparent until they touch the threads of her sisters, at which point they take on color, weight, temperature, all the qualities that make them real rather than merely possible. Her work is slowest, most deliberate, for she shapes not just what will be, but what can be. The boundaries of possibility itself, the well beneath them holds water that is perfectly still, yet constantly in motion, clear yet impenetrable to sight, finite in its container, yet infinite in its depths. This is not paradox, but truth told slant, the only way truth can be told about things that exist outside the normal rules of existence. The water remembers everything, forgets nothing, yet memory and forgetting are not quite the right words for what the well does with experience, with time, with the sediment of existence that settles into its depths. Sometimes, so the old stories say, the gods themselves come to this well-seeking wisdom, seeking to understand the patterns that govern even divine existence. They peer into the waters and see not their reflections, but their threads, the connections that bind them to all things, the patterns they are part of, whether they will it or not. Even Odin, highest of the high, must bow to what the Norns weave, must accept his thread in the great tapestry, though he may stretch it, test it, seek to understand its length and strength. The well's water rises sometimes, seeping up through the root of Yggdrasil, carrying with it the necessity that keeps the cosmos from dissolving into pure possibility. This water feeds the tree, gives it the strength to maintain structure in a universe that tends toward entropy, toward dissolution, toward the primal chaos that preceded order, and always waits at the edges of creation to reclaim what has been temporarily organized. But even as your awareness rests with this first well, you feel the pull of another depth, another route stretching down to another source. The second route leads away at an angle that doesn't quite exist in three-dimensional space, through regions where the rules are different, where wisdom takes precedence over fate, where the price of knowledge is always exactly what the seeker can barely afford to pay. The journey to the second well requires a different kind of descent, not through space, but through understanding, through layers of meaning that wrap around each other like smoke around flame. The route you follow now is older, or perhaps younger, or perhaps age means nothing here, where time flows in eddies and currents rather than in a single direction. This route bears scars, marks of ancient damage that have become part of its strength, wounds that have transformed into wisdom. The approach to Mímir's well is guarded not by warriors or walls, but by the weight of consequence, by the gravity of choice that cannot be undone. The air here tastes of metal and salt, of blood and tears, of prices paid and prices yet to be paid. Each step forward requires decision, requires the acceptance that knowledge changes the knower, that seeing truth means never again being able to pretend blindness. Mímir's well lies in a hollow that seems carved from a single piece of stone that is older than stones, a depression that might have been worn by water over eons, or might have been created complete in a single moment of cosmic necessity. The water here is different from Urðr's well, darker, heavier, with an oily sheen that reflects not light, but understanding, not images, but implications. No Norns sit here weaving. Instead, there is presence without form, wisdom without embodiment, or rather, wisdom that once had embodiment but sacrificed it for a different kind of existence. Mímir, the rememberer, the keeper of wisdom that predates the current order of things, whose head speaks prophecies even separated from his body, whose well holds the price of understanding that even gods must pay. The water does not bubble or surge, but lies still as a mirror made of liquid night. To look into it is to see not yourself, but the connections between all things, the hidden patterns that make sense of what seems senseless, the reasons behind the reasons. But this seeing comes with cost, always with cost, for wisdom cannot be given, only earned, only paid for with something precious enough to match its value. Here, in the stories that echo through all the 9 realms, Odin came seeking wisdom and paid with his eye half his sight sacrificed for a different kind of seeing. The eye still lies at the bottom of the well, not decaying but transforming, becoming something other than organ, becoming oracle, becoming the lens through which certain truths can be perceived. It watches still, that sacrificed eye seeing what its former owner cannot, knowing what knowledge costs in ways that only payment can teach. The water of this well does not rise through Yggdrasil's roots like the water of Urðr. Instead, it must be drawn up, must be earned with each sip, each droplet of wisdom extracted at a price that is always exactly what the seeker can barely afford to pay. Yet the tree needs this water too, needs the wisdom that comes from sacrifice, from choice, from the willingness to give up something valuable for something more valuable. Fragment sentences scatter like ripples across the well's surface. The cost is the lesson. The lesson is the cost. Wisdom is not knowing, but understanding the price of knowing. Each thought that forms here has edges, sharp edges that cut even as they illuminate. The water is cold, colder than ice that chooses not to freeze. Cold with the chill of truth, unadorned, truth without comfort, truth that cares nothing for the comfort of those who seek it. Temperature here is meaning, cold wisdom, hot fate, warm possibility. The well of Mímir holds the cold that preserves, that prevents the decay of forgetting, that keeps knowledge fresh across eons. Touch the water, if you dare, and feel how it numbs, even as it awakens, how it freezes the surface while setting the depths on fire with understanding. Sound comes differently here, not the bubble and surge of Urðr's well, but a deep thrumming, like the earth's own heartbeat slowed to nearly nothing, like the resonance of stones deep underground, like the echo of words spoken before language existed. This sound doesn't travel through air, but through substance itself, through the roots of the tree, through the bones of the world, through the marrow of meaning. The transition to the third well requires no journey at all, for the third well exists everywhere and nowhere, at the center and at the edges, in the beginning that never quite began. Hvergelmir, the spring of springs, the source from which all waters flow, even the waters of the other wells, even the waters that deny their origin, even the waters that have forgotten they are water. This well boils with a heat that is not heat, seethes with an energy that predates the division between motion and stillness. Here is where the dragon Níðhöggr makes his primary home, where he gnaws at the roots, not from malice but from necessity. Because even Yggdrasil must be pruned, must be prevented from growing beyond all bounds, must be kept in the creative tension between growth and decay that generates all life, all change, all stories worth telling. The sound here is different again, a roaring that is also silence, a chaos that is also pattern. Hvergelmir is paradox resolved by refusing resolution, contradiction embraced as truth. The water here is all waters and no water, the potential for liquid before it chooses to become actual, the source that sources itself, the spring that springs eternal, not in time but despite time. From this well, rivers flow in all directions, including directions that don't exist until the rivers create them. Elivaga, the ancient rivers that flow with venom and ice, that carved the void before worlds existed, that will flow still when all worlds have ended. These rivers carry more than water. They carry the raw material of existence, the prima materia from which all things are shaped, to which all things return, which remains itself despite all transformations. The dragon coils around the roots here, massive beyond description, yet also somehow intimate, present in a way that makes the cosmic personal. Níðhöggr is not evil, though evil is one of the masks he wears when stories require a villain. He is necessity itself, the force that says nothing lasts forever, not even the world tree, not even the gods, not even the stories about gods. His gnawing is rhythmic, patient, a percussion that underlies all other rhythms, the bass note that gives the melody meaning. Between his gnawing, he speaks, though speaking is not quite what he does. He emanates meaning, radiates understanding that bypasses words, that settles into consciousness like silt in still water. What he says is always true and never comforting, always necessary and never welcome. He speaks of endings that are beginnings, of the darkness between stars that defines the light, of the silence between heartbeats where everything important happens. The three wells together form a trinity of necessity, fate, wisdom, and source, each feeding the others in ways that defy linear understanding. The water of Urðr makes patterns possible. The water of Mímir makes patterns comprehensible. The water of Hvergelmir makes patterns changeable. Together, they sustain Yggdrasil, and through Yggdrasil, they sustain all the 9 realms, all the beings within those realms, all the stories those beings tell, all the dreams those stories inspire. Feel now how your awareness expands to encompass all 3 wells simultaneously, how they exist not as separate sources, but as 3 faces of a single mystery, 3 ways of approaching the unapproachable, 3 languages for speaking the unspeakable. The roots of Yggdrasil drink from all 3, carrying their different waters upward through the trunk, outward through the branches, creating the sap that is the lifeblood of existence itself. And in this mingling of waters, in this marriage of fate, wisdom, and source, something else becomes possible. Movement, change, story. For without the wells, Yggdrasil would be merely a large tree. With them, it becomes the axis of existence, the structure that allows structure, the pattern that enables all other patterns to emerge, to flourish, to fade, to be replaced by new patterns in the eternal dance of becoming. The waters sing together now, a harmony that has no melody, a rhythm that has no beat, a song that is older than sound and will outlast silence. It rises through the roots, through the trunk, reaching upward to where creatures make their homes in the vast branches, where deer browse on leaves of possibility, where an eagle watches with eyes that see everything, where a dragon gnaws at roots in an eternal cycle of creation and destruction. Above, so far above that distance becomes meaningless, where the branches of Yggdrasil spread into regions where air turns to ether, where thought becomes visible, where visibility becomes thought. Creatures move through the cosmic tree with purpose that transcends instinct, with instinct that encompasses purpose. The light here is different, neither sun, nor moon, nor star, but something older, the radiance that emanates from the tree itself, from wood that has absorbed eons of wisdom from the wells below, from leaves that have captured the light of suns that died before the current sun was born. In the highest branches, where the tree crown touches the vault of existence itself, an eagle sits. But sits is too small a word for what this eagle does. It presides, watches, exists with such intensity that its existence itself becomes an action, a force that shapes what it observes. The eagle has no name that mortals know, though the gods have called it by many kennings, each one capturing a fragment of its nature, but never the whole. Its wings, when it chooses to spread them, cast shadows that are not darkness, but a different kind of light. The light that exists between lightning and thunder, between question and answer, between heartbeats. The eagle's eyes see everything, but not in the way of ordinary sight. Each eye is a well in itself, reflecting not light, but meaning, not images, but understanding. The left eye sees what is, with clarity that would blind lesser beings, that reduces complexity to essence without losing the beauty of complexity. The right eye sees what might be, the branching paths of possibility that spread from every moment like the tree's own branches, infinite and specific, chaos and pattern united in potential. Between the eagle's eyes, in that space where binocular vision would merge into depth perception, another creature perches. Vedafölnir, the hawk, though hawk barely captures what this being is. It is focus within focus, sight within sight, the precision that allows the eagle's vast vision to narrow when narrowing is needed, to perceive the single thread in the tapestry that, if pulled, would unravel everything or weave it into new patterns. The hawk speaks to the eagle in languages that predate words, and the eagle listens with attention that could crack stones, that does crack stones in the worlds below when their conversation grows too intense for reality to easily contain. These two, eagle and hawk, are separate yet united, distinct yet merged, a paradox that resolves only in the experiencing of it. Together, they watch the 9 realms, but watching is too passive a word. They witness, which is watching that changes what is watched, observation that participates in what it observes. When the eagle blinks, somewhere in the 9 realms, day becomes night or night becomes day. When the hawk cries out, somewhere a prophecy is spoken, a doom is sealed, a fate is accepted or rejected. Below the eagle, moving through the middle branches, where the light grows softer, where the bark creates valleys and ridges large enough to be landscapes, 4 deer wander in paths that are always different, yet always the same. Dain, Dvalin, Duneyr, and Durathror. Though their names are less important than their function less important than their presence. They are not deer as Midgard knows deer, but the principle of browsing given form, the necessity of pruning made graceful, the way life feeds on life without malice, with a kind of cosmic courtesy. Each deer is different, though the differences are subtle, requiring the kind of sight that sees essence rather than appearance. Dain moves like dawn itself, always arriving, never quite arrived, his antlers catching light that hasn't quite decided to be light yet. Where he feeds, the leaves regrow immediately, but changed, touched by the quality of morning, of beginning, of the eternal fresh start that each day represents, even in the cosmic scale where days last eons. Dvalin carries the quality of delay, of the pause between breaths, of the moment of decision before decision becomes action. His movement through the branches is deliberate, considered, each step placed with awareness of all the steps that came before, all the steps that must come after. Where he feeds, time slows, thickens, becomes honey-like, sweet with the possibility of contemplation, of truly seeing before acting, of wisdom that comes from waiting. Duneyr embodies the thundering rush of necessity, the urgency that prevents stagnation, the push that moves things forward when forward is the only direction that prevents decay. His hooves strike the branches like drums, creating rhythms that echo through all the realms, rhythms that hearts follow without knowing they follow, rhythms that govern the pulse of rivers, the surge of tides, the beating of wings. Where he feeds, the tree grows eager, hungry for expansion, for the reaching that keeps it vital. Durathror is the sleeping one, though his sleep is active, productive, the kind of sleep where dreams do the work that waking cannot accomplish. He moves like smoke, like memory, like the half-recalled song that carries more meaning than its words ever could. Where he feeds, the leaves become portals, windows into other possibilities, other ways the tree might grow, other stories it might tell. His antlers carry moss that is older than forests, lichen that remembers the first moment bark distinguished itself from wood. These 4 deer never meet, yet they are always together. They move in a dance that has no choreographer, following patterns that emerge from their movement rather than directing it. Each knows where the others are without looking. Each maintains the balance that keeps the tree from growing too fast or too slow, too rigid or too chaotic. They browse eternally, yet the tree never diminishes. They consume endlessly, yet their consumption is itself a kind of creation, a way of making space for new growth, new possibilities, new expressions of the eternal returning to itself. Between the branches where the deer wander and the roots where the dragon gnaws, a squirrel runs. Ratatoskr, whose name means drill tooth, though the drilling is not through wood, but through the boundaries between above and below, between height and depth, between the eagle's vast vision and the dragon's deep knowledge. The squirrel is messenger, but more than messenger. It is the connection that allows opposition to communicate. The bridge that spans unbridgeable distances. The way words travel between those who cannot speak directly to each other. Ratatoskr runs up and down the trunk with speed that defies observation, that exists in the spaces between moments, in the cracks between seconds where causality relaxes its grip. What messages does it carry? Insults, some say, harsh words between eagle and dragon, maintaining the tension that keeps the tree vital. But insults is too simple a word for what passes between these cosmic forces. These are challenges, provocations in the oldest sense, the calling forth of response, of engagement, of the dialogue that prevents any force from becoming too comfortable, too complacent, too certain of its position. The squirrel itself adds to the messages, changes them, not from malice, but from the nature of transmission itself, the way every medium shapes what passes through it. A word spoken by the eagle becomes something else by the time it reaches the dragon, transformed by its journey through the vertical cosmos, enriched by its passage through different densities of existence. And the dragon's response, traveling upward, undergoes similar transformation, becoming more than what was sent, different from what was intended, truer perhaps than the original truth. Down in the roots, far below the middle world, below even the wells where the Norns weave and wisdom pools and sources spring, Níðhöggr gnaws. The dragon is massive beyond comprehension, yet also intimate, present in every moment of decay, every instance of breakdown that makes building up possible. Its scales are not scales, but moments of ending, each one a specific conclusion, a particular death, a unique cessation that had to happen exactly as it happened for the pattern to complete itself. The gnawing never ceases, yet it is not constant. It has rhythm, pulse, a pattern that matches no earthly understanding of time, yet creates time through its patterning. When Níðhöggr pauses, the tree grows. When it resumes, the tree consolidates, pulling its energy inward, preparing for the next surge of growth. This is not destruction, but sculpture, not vandalism, but art, the careful carving away of what must go for what must stay, to truly stay. The dragon speaks between bites, its voice the sound of earth settling, of stones finding their angle of repose, of the deep patience that underlies all impatience. What it says would terrify those who fear ending, would comfort those who understand that ending is just another kind of beginning. It speaks of the time before the tree, when there was gap without bridge, void without structure, potential without expression. It speaks of the time after the tree, when all that has been structured will return to potential, when all patterns will dissolve back into the possibility of pattern. Yet, in its gnawing, in its speaking, in its very existence, Níðhöggr serves the tree as surely as the eagle watches over it, as surely as the deer prune it, as surely as the squirrel connects its extremes. The dragon is not the tree's enemy, but its most intimate partner. The force that ensures the tree remains tree rather than becoming everything. The boundary that defines by destroying. The love that expresses itself through letting go. Other creatures, too numerous to name, too various to categorize, make their homes throughout the tree. Birds nest in hollows where the wood has worn away to create perfect shelters, their songs adding to the great harmony that rises from the tree. That is the tree, that the tree makes possible. Serpents wind through the middle branches, the scales catching light in ways that create small rainbows, bridges in miniature that echo the great rainbow bridge that connects Asgard to Midgard. Insects bore through the bark, creating galleries that become runes, that become prophecies, that become true through being spoken by the wood itself. Each creature serves the tree while serving itself, maintains the whole while pursuing its part, creates the greater harmony through its individual melody. This is not conscious cooperation, but something deeper. The way cells cooperate to create a body without knowing they are body. The way words cooperate to create meaning without understanding they are meaning. The eagle's vision encompasses all of this, sees how each creature is necessary, how the pattern would collapse without any single element, yet would adapt if any element changed. The tree remembers. The tree endures. The tree waits. It remembers the first moment when seed became sprout, when sprout became sapling, when sapling began the long journey toward becoming the axis of existence. It endures through the gnawing, through the pruning, through the messages that run up and down its trunk like blood through veins, like thoughts through minds, like dreams through sleep. It waits for what it has always waited for, what it will always wait for, the moment that is always coming and never arrives. The fulfillment that is fulfilled in the waiting itself. And through all of this, above and below, root and crown, the tree breathes. Its breathing is the wind between worlds, the tide that rises and falls in the wells at its roots, the pulse that keeps the 9 realms distinct yet connected. With each breath, the creatures of the tree respond, their movements synchronized to rhythms they don't consciously follow, but cannot help following. The way dancers move to music that plays below the threshold of hearing, felt in bones rather than heard in ears. As your awareness holds all these creatures simultaneously, eagle and hawk, deer and squirrel, dragon, and the unnamed thousands that inhabit the cosmic tree, you begin to understand that they are not separate beings, but aspects of a single being, not different creatures, but different expressions of creatureness itself. They are the tree's way of knowing itself, of maintaining itself, of transcending itself while remaining itself. They are thought given form, function given flesh, necessity given the grace of apparent choice. The quiet chase begins above, in the regions beyond the tree, yet somehow within its influence, where 2 figures pursue their eternal paths across the sky. Above the highest branches of Yggdrasil, in that realm where the tree's influence meets the vast emptiness that is not empty, where existence touches the void without touching, 2 lights move in paths worn smooth by repetition beyond counting. They move with desperation that has become grace, with terror that has transformed into duty, with speed that appears a stately procession to those who watch from the worlds below. Sól and Máni, sun and moon, sister and brother, though these relationships are approximations of something more complex, more essential, more interwoven with the fabric of reality itself. The sun is not a ball of burning gas here, not mere fusion of hydrogen into helium, but something older and younger simultaneously. Sól rides a chariot, though chariot is too small a word, for what carries the light that makes life possible, that defines day, that creates the very concept of visibility. Her horses, Arvakr and Alsvidr, early awake and all swift, do not run on ground or through air, but through the medium of existence itself, their hooves striking sparks from the boundary between is and is not, their breath creating clouds that become the morning mists in all 9 realms simultaneously. Behind her, always behind, never quite catching but never falling back, runs the wolf skull. The wolf is darkness given hunger, entropy given focus, the inevitable end that makes the journey meaningful. Without the wolf, the sun's journey would be mere wandering. With the wolf, it becomes purpose, becomes the race that creates time, that divides existence into before and after, into day and night, into the rhythm that makes stories possible. Skull's jaws snap at the wheels of the sun's chariot, sometimes so close that eclipse shadows fall across the worlds, reminding all beings that light is not guaranteed, that day is not inevitable, that every dawn is a victory barely won. The sun does not choose her path, but follows roads laid down before roads existed, paths that are mathematical principles given geographic expression. These paths spiral through dimensions that mortal minds pass as up and down, east and west, but which are really expressions of cosmic necessity, the way energy must move to remain energy, the way light must travel to remain light. Long sentences unfold like the sun's path itself, never quite straight, never quite curved, always exactly what they need to be to connect beginning to ending without ever quite beginning or ending. Sól herself is barely visible within the brightness she carries, a figure composed more of purpose than flesh, more of duty than desire. She grips the reins with hands that have never known rest, that have forgotten what stillness feels like, that exist in perpetual motion because motion is what they are. Her face, when glimpsed through the brilliance, shows neither fear nor courage, but something beyond both, the expression of someone who has accepted a role so completely that person and role have merged, have become indistinguishable, have forgotten there was ever a difference. The chariot leaves a wake of light that does not immediately dissipate, but spreads slowly through the cosmic atmosphere, becoming the ambient light that fills the worlds even when the sun is elsewhere. This is not the harsh light of revelation, but the gentle light of possibility, the illumination that allows things to be seen without destroying the mystery of seeing. It settles on leaves and stones, on water and ice, on the scales of dragons and the petals of flowers that bloom in Asgard's eternal gardens, giving each thing its color, its visibility, its participation in the shared reality that light makes possible. Parallel to Sól's path, but offset in that complex dance that creates the phases, Máni guides the moon through its own journey. His chariot is silver, where hers is gold, cool, where hers is warm, pulling light from hidden sources rather than generating it from within. The moon's light is borrowed, but transformed in the borrowing, becoming something unique, something necessary. The light that allows rest without blindness, peace without unconsciousness, the gentle visibility that makes night navigable. Behind Máni runs Hati, the wolf who hates, though hate is too simple a word for the cosmic hunger this wolf embodies. Hati is the force that says even reflected light must end, even gentleness must cease. Even the compromise of twilight must eventually resolve into full darkness or full light. The wolf's pursuit of the moon is more patient than Skjöld's chase of the sun, sometimes falling back to create the new moon's darkness, sometimes pressing close to create the full moon's urgency, the bright nights when sleep becomes difficult and dreams leak into waking. The horses that pull the moon's chariot have no names that have survived, or perhaps their names are silence itself, the spaces between words where meaning gestates. They move like thought through sleeping minds, present but not intrusive, necessary but not noticed, until attention turns to them directly. Their hooves make no sound, yet their passage creates the tides in all the waters of all the worlds, the pull that draws fluids upward in stems, downward in roots, in and out of the margins where land meets sea, between sun and moon, in the spaces their paths create but never quite fill. Stars maintain their own stillness that is not stillness but movement, so vast, so slow, that it appears static to observers, bound by shorter spans of time. These stars are not distant suns, but something else, perhaps sparks from Muspelheim's fires, frozen in the moment of escaping. Perhaps the eyes of beings too vast to otherwise perceive. Perhaps the holes torn in the fabric of sky when the gods fought their ancient wars, letting light from beyond existence leak through in points of possibility. 23. The philosophical weight of this eternal chase settles into awareness like sediment in still water. What does it mean to run forever? What does it mean to pursue forever? The sun and moon exist in a state of perpetual becoming, never able to simply be, always in motion toward a destination that moves with them, maintaining its distance perfectly, mathematically, necessarily. This is existence itself made visible, the way all things must keep moving to remain themselves, must keep changing to avoid change, must keep dying and being reborn in each moment to maintain the illusion of continuity. Sól and Máni are siblings, born of the giant Mundilfari, who named them for their beauty, comparing them to the celestial bodies they would become. The gods, offended by this presumption, or perhaps recognizing necessity when it appeared, placed the siblings in the sky to make the comparison true, to transform metaphor into reality, to make the named become the name. This is how meaning works in the deep structure of things, how words become worlds, how comparison becomes identity, how story becomes truth, through being truly told. The relationship between sun and moon is complex, never quite opposition, never quite harmony. They are partners in a dance where partnership means never touching, siblings whose kinship expresses itself through separation, lovers whose love is the space between them that makes existence possible. When they grow too close, eclipse occurs. Those moments when the ordinary rules relax and anything might happen, when prophecies are spoken and dooms are determined, when the cosmic order reveals itself as more fluid than it usually appears. During eclipse, the wolves grow bold, their howls echoing through all 9 realms simultaneously, reminding every being that the light is not guaranteed, that the chase could end, that one day, in the time of endings that the prophecies call Ragnarok, the wolves will catch their prey, will swallow sun and moon, will bring the darkness that is not night, but the absence of the possibility of day. But that time is not this time, not yet, perhaps not ever. For the prophecies speak in symbols that might mean something other than what they seem to mean. The quiet chase continues, has always continued, will always continue until it doesn't. Each day that succeeds in becoming day is a small victory over entropy. Each night that yields to dawn is entropy's gracious permission for order to persist a little longer. The balance between these forces, between the runners and the pursued, between light and the wolves that would devour light, maintains the tension that keeps existence from collapsing into either pure order or pure chaos. The horses grow tired but cannot rest, are refreshed by their exhaustion, are exhausted by their refreshing. Arvaka and Alsvidr bear runes carved on their hooves, protective magic that keeps them from burning in the sun's heat, from freezing in the cosmic cold, from forgetting their purpose in the endless repetition of their path. The moon's horses bear different runes, perhaps, or no runes, protected by their anonymity, by their existence at the edge of story where details blur into archetype. Time itself depends on this chase, not the sharp mechanical time of clocks, but the organic time of seasons, of aging, of the rhythm that underlies all other rhythms. Without sun and moon, marking days and months, existence would blur into an eternal present with no progression, no development, no stories. The chase creates the possibility of narrative, of before and after, of cause and effect, of the kind of meaning that depends on sequence, on order, on the ability to say this, then that, here, then there, now, then. The philosophical meditation deepens, slows, becomes almost hypnotic in its repetition and variation. What the sun remembers, the moon forgets. What the moon preserves, the sun burns away. They are complementary opposites, necessary enemies, the closest of siblings who can never embrace, the most distant of strangers who share everything essential. Their chase is not tragedy but structure, not curse but gift, not ending but the engine that drives all endings and beginnings, that makes the cycle possible, that prevents existence from stagnating in eternal sameness. As the energy of the narrative falls to 30% of its opening intensity, the chase itself seems to slow, not in actual speed, but in the quality of attention given to it. The desperation remains, but has mellowed into acceptance. The terror remains, but has transformed into a kind of cosmic courtesy. The way one performs a duty so long that duty becomes identity, becomes comfort, becomes the thing one would choose if choice were possible. Sol's light grows softer, not dimmer but gentler. The harsh noon sun becoming the golden hour that photographers chase, that lovers remember, that old ones rest in when the day's work is done. Máni's light grows more present, not brighter but more noticeable. The moon that one suddenly sees in afternoon sky. Reminder that night is always present, always waiting, always patient. As a wolf that knows its prey cannot escape forever, need not escape forever, for the chase itself is the point, not the catching. The sky through which they run is not sky as atmosphere, but sky as idea. The concept of above, given form enough to be traveled through, but not enough to be truly described. It has color, but not consistent color, depth, but not measurable depth, weather, but not weather that follows any earthly pattern. Sometimes it rains light, sometimes it snows darkness. Sometimes storms of pure possibility rage through it, forcing sun and moon to adjust their paths, creating the variations in day length and night length that mark the seasons in the worlds below. The wolves, Skull and Hati, are brothers themselves, sons of the great wolf Fenrir, who lies bound until the end of times. growing stronger with each moment of captivity, waiting for the moment when bonds break and all things become possible again. The sons carry their father's hunger, but not his rage, his power, but not his imprisonment, his purpose, but refined into something more specific, more focused, more eternally present. They do not hate what they chase, they simply hunger for it, with a hunger that defines them, that is them, that makes them necessary for the very existence of what they would devour. This is the paradox that runs through all existence like thread through cloth, holding everything together while marking the lines along which everything will eventually tear. The forces of preservation and destruction are not opposed, but partnered, not enemies, but dancers whose dance maintains the structure of reality. The sun needs the wolf to make its journey meaningful. The wolf needs the sun to give its hunger direction. The moon and its wolf perform the same dance in a different key. Minor where the sun's is major, cool where the sun's is warm. But the same essential pattern, the same necessary chase, the same quiet desperation that has become the rhythm of existence itself. And far below this cosmic chase, visible only when conditions are perfect, when the light of sun or moon catches it at just the right angle. Another bridge spans impossible distances, the rainbow bridge that connects the human world to the divine. The bridge reveals itself first as possibility, as the suggestion of connection where connection seems impossible, as color bleeding through the boundaries between air and light, between water and fire, between the solid earth of Midgard and the ethereal heights of Asgard. Bifröst, the rainbow bridge, though rainbow captures only its appearance, not its essence, which is passage itself given form, transition made visible. The proof that separate realms can touch without merging, can connect without losing their distinction. In the deep dream time where perception softens and logic bends like light through water, the bridge appears not as fixed structure, but as continuous becoming, always building itself or from both ends simultaneously, always meeting in a middle that exists everywhere and nowhere. Each color is a different quality of journey, a different flavor of a transformation. Red carries the urgency of blood, of life force moving between states. Orange holds the warmth of hearth fires remembered across impossible distances. Yellow brings the clarity of dawn, the moment when journey becomes possible. Green speaks of growth, of the changes that happen so slowly, they seem like stillness. Blue deepens into the wisdom of distance, the understanding that comes from separation. Indigo folds inward, the color of thoughts thinking themselves. Violet transcends, reaching toward invisible spectrums where mortal understanding fails, but divine logic begins. The approach to Bifröst requires more than physical movement, requires a shifting of the entire being into a state that can perceive bridges where others see only empty space, connection where others see only separation. From Midgard's perspective, it appears during certain conditions of light and moisture, when sun and rain collaborate to make the invisible visible. But this appearance is not the bridge itself, merely its shadow, its suggestion, the way a footprint suggests a foot without being the foot. The true bridge exists always in dimensions that fold through normal space like thread through cloth, present everywhere but visible only where the weave allows. At the Midgard end of the bridge, if end is the right word for something that exists in perpetual extension, the colors pool and swirl like living things, like thoughts made of light, like memories of journeys not yet taken. The texture here is almost liquid, responsive to intention more than to physical pressure. Step onto it with doubt, and it feels uncertain beneath your feet, wavering like heat mirages, like dreams barely remembered. Step onto it with purpose, with the clear intention to cross between worlds, and it firms into something more solid than stone, more reliable than the ground that seems so permanent, but is really just slowly moving earth. Heimdall stands at the junction where the bridge enters Asgard, though standing is too passive a word for his eternal vigilance. He exists at the boundary, is the boundary in some essential way, the guardian who is also the gate, the watcher who is also the watched. His eyes see everything, not in sequence but simultaneously, every movement in every realm registered, catalogued, understood in the instant of its occurrence. His ears hear grass growing in far fields, the wool gathering on sheep's backs, the thoughts forming in minds that haven't yet realized they're thinking. The god's presence makes the bridge more real and less real simultaneously. More real because his watching confirms its existence, gives it weight in the cosmic order. Less real because in his presence all things reveal themselves as temporary, provisional, subject to the constant judgment of whether they should be allowed to continue existing. His sword waits at his side, ready to cut the bridge should entities approach who would bring harm to Asgard, ready to sever the connection that makes connection possible. The paradox of the god who protects by being willing to destroy what he guards. Heimdall's horn, Gjallarhorn, rests nearby, waiting for the moment when it must sound, when its call will echo through all 9 realms simultaneously, announcing the beginning of endings, the end of beginnings, the moment when all bridges collapse and must be rebuilt or abandoned. But that time is not yet, may never be, exists in the future that is always approaching but never quite arriving, like the horizon that maintains its distance no matter how far one travels toward it. The bridge itself is traveled differently by different beings, experienced according to the nature of the traveler. Gods stride across it as if it was solid stone, their divine nature allowing them to ignore the impossible physics of a bridge made of light. Humans, on the rare occasions when they are permitted or compelled to cross, experience it as a journey through states of consciousness as much as through space. Each color band requires a different kind of courage, a different release of earthly certainty. The red band burns with the fever of transformation. The orange dissolves the boundaries of self. The yellow illuminates everything one would rather not see. The green grows through the traveler, making them part of the bridge, part of the journey, part of the connection between worlds. The physics of Bifröst operate on principles that precede physics, that make physics possible. It is simultaneously fragile as spider silk and strong enough to bear the weight of entire armies. It exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously, which is why it can connect realms that exist in different dimensional configurations. In one dimension, it is color. In another, it is sound, the harmony of spheres made audible. In a third, it is texture, rough and smooth, solid and permeable, present and absent. In dimensions beyond the third, it becomes concepts that language cannot capture, that mind can only approximate through metaphor. Expanding and contracting, the bridge breathes with a rhythm that matches no earthly breathing. Sometimes it stretches wide enough for entire populations to cross. Sometimes it narrows to a thread that only single souls can navigate. This breathing is not random, but responds to need, to the cosmic requirements of the moment, to the patterns that the Norns weave at their well. When great changes approach, the bridge widens, preparing for the increased traffic between realms that change necessitates. When stability reigns, it narrows, maintaining connection while preventing unnecessary mixing of things that should remain distinct. The philosophical weight of Bifröst settles into consciousness like color settling into clear water. What does it mean to bridge the unbridgeable? The rainbow appears in Earth's sky after storms, the sign of peace between conflicting forces, the promise that destruction is not the only possibility. But Bifröst is more than symbol, more than promise. It is the actual mechanism by which difference can coexist with unity, the proof that separation need not mean isolation, that boundaries can be honored while still allowing passage. In the deepest understanding, Bifröst is not just a bridge between Asgard and Midgard, but between all states of being. It connects waking and sleeping, life and death, memory and forgetting, hope and despair. Every rainbow seen in every world is a reflection of this primal bridge, a reminder that connection is always possible, even across distances that seem absolute, even between states that seem mutually exclusive. The bridge says, both can be true. The bridge says, separation is illusion. The bridge says, unity is illusion. The bridge says, the illusions are necessary and real. Travel across Bifröst is never the same twice, even for the same traveler. The bridge remembers every crossing, but uses that memory not to create repetition, but to ensure each journey is unique, specifically crafted for the traveler and the moment. A god crossing in triumph experiences different colors, different resistances, different revelations than the same god crossing in defeat. A mortal ascending experiences different challenges than a mortal descending. The bridge is conscious, or consciousness itself, or the mechanism by which consciousness recognizes itself as both observer and observed. The sound of crossing is unique, a harmony that builds from footfalls that echo in frequencies beyond hearing. Each step creates a note. Each note contributes to a chord. Each chord builds toward a symphony that plays out over the course of the crossing. But the music is not heard in the ears. It resonates in bones, in the spaces between cells, in the quantum foam where possibility collapses into actuality. It is the sound of transformation itself, the audio signature of change, the rhythm that underlies all transitions. At the Asgard end of the bridge, the colors don't simply stop but transcend into frequencies beyond visible light. Here, the bridge becomes something more abstract, less bridge and more principle, less structure and more permission. It enters Asgard not at a specific location, but at every location simultaneously, the way a radio wave enters every receiver tuned to its frequency. The gods can access it from anywhere within their realm, can step onto it from any point, and emerge at any point in Midgard. Though usually they choose the traditional terminals, the ceremonial endpoints that have accumulated significance through repetition. The bridge serves not just gods, but all beings who have legitimate need to cross between worlds. The light elves of Alfheim use it to bring dreams to sleeping mortals. The dwarves occasionally cross it to deliver their crafted wonders to those who have earned them. Even the giants, enemies of the gods, have been known to cross Bifröst under truce conditions, their massive forms making the bridge groan and spark, but never break, for the bridge honors all legitimate crossings, all necessary journeys, all transitions that serve the greater pattern. Weather on the bridge is not weather as earthly understanding defines it. There can be storms of pure color where reds and blues battle for dominance, creating purples that exist nowhere else in creation. There can be calms where all colors merge into a white that is not absence of color, but presence of all colors simultaneously, overwhelming in its completeness. There can be fogs of forgetfulness, where travelers lose themselves in the transition, forget who they were, remember who they might become, exist in the pure potential of the journey itself. The recurring motifs of the greater narrative resurface here on the bridge. The breathing of Yggdrasil echoes in Bifröst's expansion and contraction. The weaving of the Norns is visible in the way colors braid together, separate, recombine. The gnawing of Níðhöggr has its counterpart in the way the bridge sometimes flickers, threatens to dissolve, reminds all users that even this connection is temporary, subject to the entropy that claims all things eventually. The quiet chase of sun and moon reflects in the way light moves across the bridge's surface, always in motion, never still, creating the shimmer that makes the bridge seem alive. Sound dominates vision here in the deeper regions of crossing. The bridge sings not with voice, but with the resonance of light itself, vibrating at frequencies that create meaning without words. Each color has its note, its tone, its contribution to the harmony. Red rumbles in bass frequencies that shake the foundation of being. Violet soars in frequencies so high they border on silence, on the ultrasonic realms where only certain beings can perceive meaning. Between them, the other colors create melodies that tell stories, histories of every crossing, prophecies of crossings yet to come. The texture of the bridge changes constantly, responding to touch like a living thing. Sometimes it feels like walking on solid light, firm but yielding, supportive but not constraining. Sometimes it feels like walking through light, like becoming light, like discovering that flesh and bone were always just condensed illumination, waiting to remember its true nature. The surface can be smooth as still water, rough as tree bark, shifting between textures in response to the traveler's needs, fears, expectations. Memory operates differently on Bifröst. Past crossings blur together, creating a palimpsest of experience where individual journeys become part of a greater journey, where personal transformation becomes part of the cosmic transformation that the bridge enables and represents. Future crossings cast shadows backward, influencing present experience with possibilities not yet realized. The bridge exists in all times simultaneously, which is why prophecies spoken while crossing carry special weight. Why oaths sworn on Bifröst cannot be broken without breaking the swearer. The bridge teaches through the crossing. Each step is a lesson in transformation, in the price and prize of change. The red section teaches about passion, about the fire that drives beings to seek what lies beyond their current state. Orange teaches about creativity, about the joy of making new from old. Yellow teaches clarity, the sometimes painful illumination that reveals things as they are rather than as we wish them to be. Green teaches growth, the slow patience of change that happens at the pace of seasons. Blue teaches depth, the wisdom that comes from diving below surfaces. Indigo teaches intuition, the knowledge that bypasses reasoning. Violet teaches transcendence, the release of everything that seemed essential but was only temporary. At certain times, rarely and without warning, the bridge manifests in its complete form, visible from all 9 realms simultaneously. During these moments, all beings in all worlds can see the connection that always exists, but usually remains hidden. The bridge appears not just as rainbow, but as architecture of light, as mathematics made visible, as the proof that beauty and function are not separate qualities, but different names for the same essential rightness. These manifestations last only moments, but are remembered forever, become the seeds of stories, myths, religions that try to capture and contain what cannot be captured or contained. The bridge responds to the state of the cosmos, reflecting the health or disease of the world tree, the balance or imbalance between the realms. When all is well, it shimmers with clear, distinct colors, each band maintaining its integrity while harmonizing with the others. When discord grows, the colors begin to blur, to conflict, to create combinations that hurt to perceive. In times of great crisis, the bridge can fragment, sections becoming unreliable, forcing travelers to leap across gaps of pure void, to continue through faith when the path itself fails. Heimdall's relationship with the bridge transcends simple guardianship. He is wedded to it in some essential way, his existence intertwined with its existence. When he sleeps, which is rarely and briefly, the bridge dreams his dreams, manifests his visions in patterns of light that only the wisest can interpret. When he is fully alert, the bridge carries his awareness throughout its length, making every point on the bridge a potential point of observation. Every crossing an event witnessed and judged by divine attention. The philosophical implications deepen like water finding its level in deep wells. Bifröst proves that connection is not just possible, but necessary, that isolation is the true impossibility. Even the most separate realms are connected by light, by the potential for light, by the memory of light. The bridge is evidence that boundaries exist not to prevent crossing, but to make crossing meaningful, to create the possibility of journey, of change, of the story that emerges from movement between states. As travelers near the end of their crossing, whether ascending to Asgard or descending to Midgard, they experience a phenomenon that has no name in any language. It is the feeling of being between breaths, between heartbeats, between thoughts. Time stretches and compresses simultaneously. The traveler exists in pure transition, no longer what they were, not yet what they will become. This moment can last forever, and no time at all, can be terrifying and ecstatic, can be the death of who they were and the birth of who they are becoming. The bridge ends without ending, begins without beginning. Its terminals are not fixed points, but zones of probability where crossing becomes more and more likely until it has definitely occurred, where the traveler realizes they have arrived without ever experiencing a moment of arrival. This is the deepest mystery of Bifröst. It is not traveled but experienced, not crossed but undergone, not used but participated in. And at the other end of existence, at the roots of the great tree where the wells bubble with their different wisdoms, 3 figures sit in eternal contemplation, weaving the threads that make bridges possible, that make crossing necessary, that create the patterns which even light must follow. In the deepest stillness, where even thought moves slowly, where time thickens like honey in winter cold, where the very concept of action dissolves into pure being. The Norns sit at their well beneath the great tree's most sacred root. They have always been sitting here. They are sitting here now. They will always be sitting here. These three statements are equally true and equally incomplete. For the Norns exist in a relationship with time that makes normal temporal language inadequate, makes past and future and present seem like crude approximations of something more subtle, more pervasive, more essentially woven into the fabric of what is. Urðr, Verdandi, and Skuld are the names, though names imply separation where there is only distinction, imply identity where there is only function, imply personality where there is only purpose. They are three, and they are one, and they are countless, depending on the angle of perception, depending on the depth of understanding, depending on the courage of the observer to see what cannot be unseen once truly witnessed. They are sisters, but not siblings, women but not female, beings but not creatures, present but not located, eternal but not unchanging. The well beside which they sit does not simply contain water, but contains the concept of containment itself, the principle that allows anything to hold anything else, that creates the possibility of vessel and content, of boundary and bounded. The water within is perfectly still, yet constantly moving, clear yet impenetrable, finite in volume yet infinite in depth. To look into it is to see not reflection, but connection, not image, but pattern, not surface, but the impossibility of surface when everything connects to everything else through threads, too fine to see but too strong to break. Urðr, whose name speaks of what has become, of the accomplished fact, of the past that is not past, but eternally present in its pastness, works with threads that seem heavy with actuality, saturated with the weight of things that have happened and cannot unhappen. Her fingers move with the certainty of stone settling into its final position after millennia of erosion, with the patience of water wearing through rock one droplet at a time, with the inevitability of entropy claiming what order has temporarily assembled. The threads she handles are dark with the patina of completion, rich with the complexity of stories fully told, dense with the meaning that only endings can provide. Her face, when it can be said to be a face rather than the suggestion of facing, shows neither age nor youth, but something outside the spectrum that runs between them. Her expression carries the peace of absolute completion, the satisfaction of things that have found their proper place in the pattern, the deep rest that comes after all striving has ceased. Yet this peace is active, productive, the kind of stillness that generates motion, the kind of ending that enables beginning. She does not speak often, but when she does, her words carry the weight of accomplished fact. The authority of what has already occurred and cannot be argued with, only accepted or denied at one's peril. Vedandi, the eternal present, the always becoming, the moment that never arrives because it is always arriving, works with threads that shimmer with immediacy, that pulse with the heartbeat of now, that carry the warmth of life in the living of it. Her fingers dance rather than move, play rather than work, though play is too light a word for the profound creativity of her engagement with the threads. She is weaving reality in real time, creating the present moment from the intersection of what was and what might be, finding in their crossing the single point of what is. The threads in her hands are all colors and no color, all textures and no texture, everything and nothing. Because the present is too immediate to have qualities, too close to have perspective, too present to be present ed. She works faster than her sisters, but also slower. Faster because the present is always urgent, always demanding immediate attention. Slower because the present is eternal, always available, never exhausted. Her section of the weaving is always the most visible, but also the most impossible to see clearly, like trying to see one's own seeing, like trying to think about the exact thought one is thinking while thinking it. Skuld, the necessity that has not yet become necessary, the future that is always future even when it becomes present, the debt that reality owes to itself and must eventually pay, works with threads that are transparent until they touch the threads of her sisters, at which point they take on all the qualities they will need to become real. Her work is the most mysterious, for she weaves not what will be, but what must be possible for what will be to become. She creates not future, but futurity, not tomorrow, but the principle that allows tomorrow to exist. Her threads come from nowhere, or rather from the nowhere that is everywhere. From the reservoir of potential that surrounds all actual things like dark matter, surrounds visible stars. She draws them into being through the act of weaving itself, creates them by kneading them, manifests them through the requirement that the pattern continue, that the weaving not cease, that the story not end in simple stopping, but in completion. Her fingers move with deliberation that seems slow, but covers infinite distance, that seems careful, but never hesitates, that seems to choose, but chooses what was always going to be chosen. Together, the three create something that is not cloth, but uses cloth as metaphor, not pattern, but uses pattern as approximation, not fate, but uses fate as the closest word available in languages that were never meant to describe what happens at the roots of the world tree. The weaving is both tiny and vast, both simple and infinitely complex, both beautiful and terrible, depending on where one stands in relation to it, depending on whether one sees one's own thread or the whole tapestry, depending on whether one focuses on the pattern or the spaces between the patterns where possibility lives. The threads themselves are made of everything and nothing, of time crystallized into fiber, of choice condensed into strand, of possibility refined into line. Each thread is a life, but life is too small a word. Each thread is an existence, a trajectory through reality, a path from beginning to ending that might be the life of a person, a god, a world, a thought, a moment, a possibility that never quite becomes actual but influences all actuality by its potential presence. The threads are infinite in number, yet each is unique, each is necessary, each contributes to a pattern that would collapse without it, yet would adapt if it were removed. Long flowing sentences cascade like the threads themselves, never quite ending, but transforming into new beginnings, carrying meaning forward without pause, without the artificial divisions that ordinary thought requires to manage the unmanageable complexity of what the Norns weave. Their work is without haste, but also without pause, without urgency, but also without delay, accomplished in a timing that exists outside time, in a rhythm that creates rhythm, in a pace that makes all other paces possible. The repetition in their movements becomes hypnotic if watched too long, dangerous if contemplated too deeply. For to truly understand what the Norns do is to understand one's own thread in the weaving, to see one's own pattern in the larger pattern, to know one's own fate in a way that makes living it either impossible or inevitable, This is why even the gods approach the Norns with caution, why even Odin, who sacrificed an eye for wisdom, does not stare too long at their work, why knowledge of fate is both the most desired and most feared of all knowledge. The well beside which they work does not simply reflect their weaving, but participates in it. The water rises sometimes, seeping into the threads, carrying into them the quality of necessity, of pattern, of the way things must be for other things to be possible. When the water touches a thread, that thread becomes fixed, not unchangeable, but committed to its course, like a river that has carved its channel too deep to easily escape it. The water is fate in liquid form, or fate is water in conceptual form, or both are metaphors for something that has no form, but requires form to be communicated. The Norns themselves never tire, never hunger, never cease their work, for they are not beings who work, but work itself, given just enough beingness to be perceived. They are eternal qualities of existence, the having happened, the happening, the going to happen. Without them, everything would exist in an eternal present with no causality, no consequence, no meaning derived from sequence. They create the possibility of story by creating the possibility of beginning, middle, and end, even though their own story has none of these things, exists outside the patterns they create for everything else. Sometimes beings come to the well seeking knowledge of their fate, though coming is perhaps the wrong word, but the kind of arrival that happens here, in this place, that is not quite place, at this time, that is not quite time. The Norns do not look up from their work, do not acknowledge the seekers directly, but sometimes, rarely, a thread will become visible to the seeker, their own thread or another's. And in that glimpse, entire futures unfold, entire pasts become clear, entire presents reveal their true significance. But the knowledge gained at the well of fate is always ambiguous, always double-edged, always both more and less than what was sought. To know one's fate is not to be able to change it, but to understand why it cannot be changed, or why changing it would change everything else in ways that make the change not worth making. The threads are all connected, all interdependent, and to pull one is to affect all others in ripples that extend through the entire weaving, backward and forward through time, upward and downward through the realms, inward and outward through dimensions of meaning that have no spatial metaphors. The energy here has fallen to 20% of what it was in the beginning, not through loss, but through concentration, through distillation, through the refinement that comes from approaching the essential. The stillness is almost complete, broken only by the subtle movement of the Norn's fingers, by the occasional bubble rising through the well's surface, by the sound of threads brushing against threads in patterns too complex for ears to pass as rhythm, but which create the underlying rhythm of all existence. In this deep stillness, mysteries reveal themselves not through revelation, but through acceptance, through the surrender to not knowing that paradoxically leads to knowing, through the release of the need to understand that allows understanding to arise spontaneously, like bubbles rising through still water, like thoughts emerging from the depths of sleep, like memories of things that haven't happened yet but always were happening, are happening, will happen. The Norns continue their work, have always continued their work, will always continue their work, until the time when work and rest become the same thing. when the pattern completes itself by becoming its own beginning, when the threads they weave reveal themselves to have always been weaving themselves, using the Norns as the fiction necessary to make the truth bearable, comprehensible, survivable for beings who need agency even in the face of fate, who need choice even in the heart of necessity, who need story even at the source where all stories begin and end, as it was in the beginning before the cosmos knew its own name, before the tree had roots to sink or branches to spread. The void waited with the patience of non-existence, and in that waiting, time was born, not as measurement but as possibility, as the space between what is not and what might be. The seasons of the cosmos turn on wheels that dwarf understanding, wheels within wheels, cycles within cycles, the great breathing of existence that measures itself not in years or centuries, but in ages that have names only in the languages of gods, and even they speak those names carefully, understanding that to name a thing is to begin its ending, to define it is to limit it, to know it is to start the long process of unknowing that makes room for what comes next. The spring of the cosmos dawns not with warmth, but with awakening, with the first stirring of consciousness in the vast darkness, with the separation of fire and ice that creates the fertile void where worlds can grow. This spring lasts eons by mortal reckoning, the slow unfurling of potential into form, the gradual emergence of pattern from chaos, the delicate first steps of existence, learning what it means to exist. In this cosmic spring, Yggdrasil was a seed, though seed implies something smaller than what was, something that could be contained, measured, understood. This seed was possibility itself, containing within it all the trees that would ever be, all the worlds that would hang like fruit from its branches, all the stories that would nest like birds in its infinite reaches. The summer of the cosmos blazes with creation, with the explosive growth that follows long germination, with the exuberance of existence discovering its own power. Gods are born in this summer, rising from the intersection of forces that momentarily achieve consciousness, momentarily maintain form long enough to name themselves, to name others, to create the relationships that will define the next age. The 9 realms establish themselves, each finding its place in the great tree's embrace, each developing its own character, its own laws, its own way of being that distinguishes it from the others while remaining part of the whole. This is the age of building, of establishing, of the great works that will stand as monuments to possibility realized. But even cosmic summer cannot last forever, and autumn comes with its harvest, its accounting, its beautiful decay that makes room for what must come next. The autumn of the cosmos is not decline, but transformation. Not ending, but the preparation for ending that makes ending meaningful. The leaves of Yggdrasil turn colors that have no names in mortal speech. Colors that tell the story of everything that has happened in their green lifetime. Every choice made, every path taken, every possibility explored or abandoned. These leaves fall sometimes, each one a world ending, a story concluding, a possibility exhausted, and where they land, they become the soil from which new possibilities will eventually grow. And winter, the great winter that the prophecies call Fimbulvetra, the mighty winter, approaches with the inexorability of entropy itself. 3 years of winter without summer between them, though years is too small a word for the duration of cosmic seasons. This is not the winter of death, but the winter of rest, of the deep sleep, that allows dreams to process experience into wisdom, that allows the cosmos to digest what it has created, to understand what it has become, to prepare for the next cycle of becoming. In this winter, the tree stands bare but not dead, dormant but not deceased, waiting but not passive, gathering strength for the next spring that will come, must come, has always been coming, even in the depths of winter's grip. The slow turning of these seasons generates the smaller turnings. The way a great wheel's rotation causes smaller wheels to spin, each at its own rate, each creating its own cycles within the greater cycle. Midgard experiences its seasons as echoes of the cosmic seasons, its springs and summers and autumns and winters playing out in miniature, the vast drama of cosmic transformation. Even the daily cycle of light and darkness echoes this greater rhythm, each day a tiny age, each night a miniature winter, each dawn a cosmic spring compressed into a moment of transformation. Time moves differently in different realms, thick and slow in some, thin and quick in others. But all are synchronized to the great turning. All keep pace with the cosmic seasons even while experiencing them differently. In Asgard, time moves with the stately pace of divine purpose, each moment given its full weight, its complete significance. In Helheim, time pools and eddies, sometimes flowing backward, sometimes stopping entirely, sometimes rushing forward to catch up with itself. In Midgard, time flows at the pace of mortal anxiety, fast enough to create urgency, slow enough to allow accomplishment, balanced precisely to generate the maximum number of stories in the minimum amount of duration. As it was in the beginning, the pattern repeats, but each repetition is unique, like waves that follow the same laws but never produce identical forms. The cosmos does not cycle through identical ages, but spirals through similar ones, each turn of the spiral carrying forward what was learned in the previous turn. Each age both recapitulation and innovation, both memory and discovery. The tree remembers every spring it has experienced, every summer it has thrived through, every autumn it has released into, every winter it has endured. And this memory informs but does not determine how it will experience the next turning. The Norns' weaving reflects these seasons, shows them, creates them, is created by them in the paradox of causality that exists at the roots of the world tree. Their threads change color with the cosmic seasons, bright greens and golds in spring, deep reds and purples in summer, browns and oranges in autumn, whites and grays and blacks in winter. But these are approximations, metaphors for qualities that transcend color, that exist in spectrums visible only to those who see with more than eyes, who perceive with the deep knowing that comes from being part of the pattern rather than observing it from outside. The quiet chase of sun and moon marks these seasons in its own way, the paths shifting with the cosmic tilt that no astronomy can measure because it happens in dimensions that precede space. In cosmic spring, the chase quickens, the wolves falling back as life force surges through all things. In summer, the chase becomes a dance, predictable, sustainable, almost joyful in its terrible necessity. In autumn, the wolves gain ground, their howls echoing more clearly through the cooling air of existence. In winter, they nearly catch their prey, their jaws snapping so close that eclipses become frequent, darkness threatening to swallow light entirely before some force, some necessity, some deeper pattern intervenes to maintain the chase for another age. The creatures of the tree respond to these vast seasons in their own ways. The eagle's vision sharpens in cosmic autumn, seeing deeper into the patterns as they become clearer in the cooling light. The deer move more slowly in cosmic winter, their browsing becoming meditation, their pruning becoming prayer. The dragon gnaws harder in cosmic summer when the tree's growth threatens to exceed all boundaries, and gentler in winter when the tree needs all its strength merely to endure. Ratatoskr's messages change with the seasons too, becoming prophecies in autumn, memories in winter, possibilities in spring, actualities in summer. Even Bifröst reflects the cosmic seasons, its colors shifting in hue and intensity as the ages turn. In cosmic spring, the bridge blazes with colors too vivid for normal perception, colors that speak of potential unleashed. In summer, the colors deepen, mature, become the reliable spectrum that travelers depend upon. In autumn, they begin to fade, not disappearing, but becoming transparent, showing the void that the bridge spans, the nothing that makes something possible. In winter, the bridge becomes almost invisible, maintaining connection through will rather than structure, through memory rather than presence, through the promise of return rather than the fact of existence. The wells at the tree's roots change too, though change is perhaps too active a word for the subtle shifts in their eternal natures. Urðr's well becomes deeper in cosmic winter, as more fates complete themselves and settle into sediment at its bottom. Mímir's well becomes clearer in autumn, as wisdom distills from the experiences of summer. Hvergelmir boils more vigorously in spring, sending forth the rivers that will carve new channels through the void, create new possibilities for existence to explore. As it was in the beginning, so it continues, but continuation is not repetition, not stasis, not the boring revolution of identical cycles. Each cosmic season brings surprises, variations, innovations that prevent the pattern from becoming mere pattern, that keep existence fresh, that ensure stories remain worth telling. Sometimes spring comes early, catching winter by surprise, forcing rapid transformations that create new forms, new possibilities, new ways of being. Sometimes autumn lingers, allowing extra time for harvest, for contemplation, for the beautiful decay that makes room for rebirth. Sometimes summer blazes so hot that it burns away old patterns entirely, creating space for genuinely new configurations. Sometimes winter digs so deep that it touches the primal cold that existed before existence, bringing back whispers of the void that preceded everything, reminders of the nothing that waits patiently outside the boundaries of something. The energy now has fallen to 15%, matching the deep winter of cosmic cycles, the profound rest that precedes renewal. Thoughts move slowly here, like sap in winter trees, like blood in sleeping bears, like time itself, when it forgets its urgency and remembers its eternity. This is the depth where consciousness touches its own roots, where awareness becomes aware of awareness, where the story understands itself as story while remaining immersed in its own telling. The prophecies speak of Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, the end of the current cosmic age. But prophecies are themselves subject to the seasons, ripening in their own time, changing meaning as perspective shifts, revealing new interpretations as consciousness evolves to understand them differently. Perhaps Ragnarok is not ending but transformation. Perhaps it is not destruction but renewal. Perhaps it is both and neither, something outside the binary of creation and destruction, something that happens not in time but to time, not in the cosmos but to the cosmos, the moment when the pattern recognizes itself and, in recognizing, transcends itself. But that time is not yet, or is always, or has already happened in the part of the pattern we haven't reached yet. The cosmic seasons continue their slow turning, carrying all existence through the changes that prevent stagnation, through the repetitions that create meaning, through the variations that keep eternity from becoming boring. The tree stands at the center of it all, breathing with the rhythm of ages, its roots deep in the wells of necessity, its branches high in the realms of possibility, its trunk the present moment that connects what was with what will be. As it was in the beginning, the void waits, patient as only non-existence can be patient. And in that waiting, time continues to be born, moment by moment, age by age, season by season. The slow turning that keeps all existence fresh, that prevents the cosmos from collapsing into either pure order or pure chaos, that maintains the creative tension between pattern and possibility, that generates all stories, all meanings, all the dreams that nest like birds in the branches of the world tree. Now all the threads converge, not in ending, but in recognition, in the deep understanding that separation was always illusion, that the 9 realms were always one realm seen from 9 perspectives, that the wells were always one water experienced 3 ways, that the creatures of the tree were always the tree itself, knowing itself through multiplication, through the beautiful fiction of distinction that makes relationship possible. The map that was drawn so carefully in the mind begins to overlay itself, each realm becoming transparent, showing through to the others, revealing the connections that were always there but required the journey to perceive. See how Midgard, that middle realm where mortals struggle and strive, is not separate from but interpenetrated by all the others. Every human carries within them a spark from Muspelheim's fires, a shard from Niflheim's ice, creating the warm life that exists balanced between extremes. Every mortal mind contains a fragment of Asgard's clarity, a shadow of Helheim's depth, a reflection of Alfheim's light, a cave that echoes Svartalfheim's workshops. The giants of Jotunheim live in human passion, in the forces too strong to be contained by reason. The Vanir's earth wisdom runs through mortal veins with the blood itself. The knowledge of growth and decay that needs no teaching because it is written in the cells themselves. The roots of Yggdrasil, drinking from their 3 wells, do not simply sustain the tree, but create it moment by moment, choice by choice, thread by thread. Watch how the water rises through the wood, how it becomes sap, becomes life, becomes the possibility of leaves and branches, and the creatures that inhabit them. The well of fate provides structure. The well of wisdom provides meaning. The well of sources provides the raw material from which both structure and meaning emerge. Together, they create the circulation that prevents stagnation, the flow that maintains freshness even in eternity, the change that allows permanence to persist without becoming prison. The eagle in the crown sees all this, has always seen it, its vision encompassing not just the physical realms, but the patterns that connect them, the relationships that define them, the stories that emerge from their interaction. Its eyes, one seeing what is, one seeing what might be, create depth perception in dimensions that have no names, allowing it to perceive the cosmic seasons not as sequence but as symphony, not as progression but as dance, not as line but as spiral, always returning but never to the same place. Between its eyes, The hawk focuses this vast vision into specific understanding, into the particular insights that make the universal personal, that bring the cosmic down to the comprehensible, that translate the ineffable into the merely mysterious. This focusing does not diminish but enriches, does not simplify but clarifies, does not reduce but refines, like light passing through a lens to become more itself, more intense, more capable of illumination. The four deer, eternally browsing, maintain the balance between growth and pruning, between expansion and containment, between the tree's urge to become everything and the necessity that it remains something specific, something structured, something capable of supporting the worlds that depend upon it. Their paths through the branches create the patterns that become seasons in the worlds below. Their hoofbeats, the rhythm that hearts follow. Their breathing, the wind that carries seeds and souls between the realms. Níðhöggr at the roots gnaws with purpose that transcends destruction, creating the space into which the tree can grow by removing what has served its purpose, what has completed its pattern, what must be released for new patterns to emerge. The dragon is not the tree's enemy, but its most intimate partner, the force that ensures renewal, that prevents the crystallization that would come from eternal growth without decay. Its gnawing is music, percussion that underlies all other rhythms, the bass note that gives the melody meaning, the silence between notes that makes music possible. Ratatoskr runs between them all, the messenger that is also the message, the connection that is also the connected, the movement that prevents the cosmic conversation from ending. The squirrel carries not just words, but relationship itself, the ongoing dialogue that keeps the tree vital, that prevents any force from becoming absolute, that maintains the tension which is also balance, the opposition which is also cooperation, the conflict which is also harmony. The sun and moon continue their chase across the sky that is also the tree's crown, their light filtering through leaves that are also worlds, creating the shadows and illuminations that become day and night, knowledge and mystery, the seen and the hidden. Their wolves pursue with hunger that is also necessity, with threat that is also promise, with darkness that defines light by contrast, that makes light precious by making it precarious, that creates meaning through the possibility of meaninglessness. Bifröst bridges it all, not just Asgard and Midgard, but all states of being, all conditions of existence, all the ways consciousness can know itself. The bridge is proof that connection is not just possible, but inevitable, that separation is temporary, that all things are already connected, and need only remember their connection to cross between states. Its colors are the spectrum of transformation, each hue a different way of changing, a different price for change, a different gift that change brings to those brave enough to pay its price. The Norns continue weaving at their well, their fingers moving with the certainty of necessity, the creativity of possibility, the patience of eternity. But now it becomes clear that they are not weaving fate so much as revealing it, not creating the pattern so much as making it visible, not determining what must be so much as showing what has always been becoming. Their threads are not chains, but connections, not limitations, but definitions, not prisons, but the structures that make freedom possible by creating something to be free from, free within, free for. All of this together creates a unity that encompasses diversity, a oneness that requires manyness, a simplicity that emerges from complexity without destroying it. The tree is all of it, root and crown, trunk and branch, leaf and bark, and all the spaces between, all the creatures that inhabit it, all the wells that feed it, all the seasons it experiences, all the stories it enables. But the tree is also none of it, is the space in which all of it exists, the possibility that allows these possibilities, the dream that dreams the dreamers who dream it in return. Feel how your awareness expands to hold all of this simultaneously, not through effort, but through release, not through grasping, but through allowing, not through understanding, but through accepting mystery as a form of understanding. The map you have built in your mind reveals itself as unnecessary, for you are already in all the places it describes, have always been there, will always be there. You are the mortal in Midgard and the god in Asgard, the elf in the light and the dwarf in the workshop, the giant at the edge and the dragon at the root, the eagle watching and the deer browsing, the squirrel running and the bridge spanning. The breathing of the tree becomes your breathing, slow and deep and patient, measuring time not in heartbeats, but in ages, not in moments, but in eons. Yet each heartbeat contains eons, each moment encompasses ages. For time is not a line, but a web, not a river, but an ocean, not a prison, but a playground, where consciousness explores its own possibilities, its own limitations, its own transcendence of those limitations. As the threads weave together, as the realms overlap and interpenetrate, as the wells mingle their waters in the rising sap of the tree, something new becomes visible, or perhaps something ancient becomes visible again, something that was always there but required the journey to perceive. This is the pattern behind the pattern, the story behind the stories, the truth that all the myths have been trying to tell without ever quite capturing. Because to capture it would be to kill it, to define it would be to diminish it, to know it completely would be to end the beautiful mystery of partial knowing that keeps existence interesting. The tree remembers all of this, has always remembered it, will always remember it. In its wood is written every story that has ever been told beneath its branches, every dream that has ever been dreamed in its shadow, every possibility that has ever been explored or avoided, chosen or rejected, actualized or left potential. The tree is memory itself, but not passive memory, not mere storage, but active memory, creative memory, the kind of memory that changes what it remembers in the act of remembering, that creates the past as much as it recalls it, that makes history from the raw material of happening. And in this remembering, this vast, patient, eternal remembering, the tree also forgets. It forgets strategically, creatively, compassionately, releasing what no longer serves, what has completed its purpose, what must be forgotten for new things to be remembered. This forgetting is not loss, but gift, not absence, but space, not emptiness, but potential. The void that waits at the heart of all fullness, the silence that lives at the center of all sound, the darkness that defines all light. Transitional phrases weave through the narrative like Ratatoskr through the branches, connecting what seems separate, revealing unity in apparent diversity. Just as the eagle sees all from above, we now see all from within. Where the deer browse, we have browsed. Where the dragon gnaws, we have gnawed. Where the sun flees and the moon pursues and the wolves hunger and the bridge spans, we have fled and pursued and hungered and spanned. We have been the thread in the Norn's fingers, the water in the wells, the sap in the tree, the light on the leaves, the shadow in the roots. The energy continues to fall, approaching the deep rest that is not ending but transformation, not conclusion but transition, not sleep, but the deeper awareness that sometimes comes in sleep, when the conscious mind releases its grip and deeper knowings surface. Ancient memories awaken, connections reveal themselves that were always there but needed darkness to become visible, like stars that are always present but can only be seen when the sun's light fades. Each realm whispers its essence one more time, a farewell that is also a greeting, an ending that is also a beginning. Asgard's divine light softens into the gold of memory. Midgard's struggles resolve into the peace of acceptance. Helheim's shadows reveal themselves as the necessary darkness that gives light meaning. Alfheim's brilliance becomes the gentle glow of possibility. Svartalfheim's forge fires bank into the warm coals of creativity at rest. Vanaheim's earth wisdom settles into the deep knowing of soil preparing for seeds. Jotunheim's chaos becomes the fertile void from which order emerges. Muspelheim's flames become the spark that waits in every heart. Niflheim's ice becomes the stillness that preserves, that holds, that remembers. The cosmic seasons prepare for another turning, another age, another spiral through the patterns that never quite repeat, that always surprise, that keep eternity from becoming boring. Spring waits beneath winter's surface, patient as seeds in frozen ground. Summer dreams in spring's first warmth. Autumn lurks in summer's fullness. Winter watches from autumn's beautiful decay. The cycle continues, has always continued, will always continue, until continuation itself transforms into something else, something unimaginable from within the cycle, something that can only be known by living through it, by becoming it, by releasing the need to know it. All of this, all of everything, rests in the eternal now of the tree's existence, in the timeless time where all times meet, in the placeless place where all places touch, in the story that contains all stories while itself remaining unstory, untold, untellable. The mystery at the heart of the world tree that keeps it alive, that keeps it growing, that keeps it dreaming the dream that we call existence, that we call the 9 realms, that we call ourselves. Now, in the deepest part of the journey, where consciousness hovers between waking and sleeping, between knowing and unknowing, between being and becoming, the great tree speaks without words, communicates without sound, shares its deepest secret without revealing it. For to reveal it would be to end the mystery that keeps existence interesting, that keeps stories worth telling, that keeps the cosmic seasons turning in their eternal, ever-changing dance. The light now is neither sun nor moon, but something older, softer. The light that existed before the division into day and night. The light that will exist after all divisions have been reunited. The light that lives in the space between closing eyes and opening dreams. Between last thoughts and first forgetting. Between the exhale of release and the inhale of acceptance. This light does not illuminate but suggests, does not reveal but implies, does not show but allows showing, creates the possibility of seeing without determining what will be seen. Listen, though listening is not quite the right word for this reception that happens below hearing, beyond hearing, behind hearing. In the place where sound becomes meaning without passing through ears, where vibration becomes understanding without requiring interpretation, where the tree's ancient voice speaks in the language that predates all languages, that will outlast all languages, that exists in the silence between words where true communication happens. The tree says, without saying, that it too is dreaming, that all of existence is its dream, but also that it exists within the dream of something larger, something that dreams the tree, that dreams the worlds, that dream the beings that dream of trees, an infinite recursion of dreaming that has no beginning, no ending, only the eternal middle where we always find ourselves, always have found ourselves, always will find ourselves, no matter how far we travel toward origins or destinations. Every root that reaches into the wells is also a branch reaching into skies we cannot perceive. Every branch that stretches toward heaven is also a root drinking from wells we cannot imagine. The tree is not oriented in space because it creates space through its orientation, defines up and down, in and out, here and there, through its presence that is also absence, its absence that is also presence, its existence that confirms the void, its void that enables existence. The 9 realms spiral around the trunk like thoughts around a central obsession, like dreams around a dreamer, like possibilities around an actuality that is itself only a possibility in some larger pattern we can sense but not see, feel but not touch, know but not understand. Each realm dreams the others into being while being dreamed by them in return. A mutual creation that has no creator, no starting point, no prime mover, only the eternal co-arising that mystics glimpse in their deepest meditations, that mathematicians discover in their most abstract equations. The children know before they learn to forget it. Feel how the boundaries between realms are not walls but membranes, not barriers but bridges, not separations but the spaces where connection becomes possible. These boundaries breathe, pulse, shift with the cosmic seasons, sometimes thick as mountains, sometimes thin as thought, sometimes absent entirely in those moments when all realms remember they are one realm, all beings remember they are one being, all stories remember they are one story told in infinite variations to keep the teller entertained, engaged, entranced by their own telling. The wells at the roots are also stars in skies above skies, pouring their waters upward into roots that are also branches, feeding a tree that is also feeding them, creating the circulation that is also stillness, the movement that is also rest, the change that is also permanence. Urðr's well remembers the future that creates the past. Mímir's well forgets the wisdom that enables ignorance. Hvergelmir boils with the ice that freezes fire. All paradoxes resolve not through resolution, but through acceptance. That paradox is the only truth, precise enough to capture the imprecision of existence. The creatures of the tree stir in their eternal activities that are also eternal rest. The eagle's eyes close without closing, seeing inward to visions that create what its outer eyes perceive. The hawk between its eyes dreams of focus while dispersing into everywhere. The deer browse on leaves that are also stars, worlds, possibilities, consuming what they create, creating what they consume. The dragon gnaws on roots that are also the foundation of its own existence, destroying what sustains it, sustaining what it destroys. The squirrel runs messages that change in the carrying, becoming true through being altered, altered through being true. Above it all, below it all, through it all, the cosmic chase continues to slow. The sun and moon approaching that moment of perfect balance where neither leads nor follows, where the wolves pause in their pursuit to remember what they're chasing, why they're chasing, whether the chase creates them or they create the chase. In this pause, which lasts forever and no time at all, day and night merge into the twilight that is not ending but transformation, not dimming but the revelation that light and darkness were always the same thing seen from different angles, different speeds, different states of consciousness. Bifröst shimmers with colors that have no names because they exist before naming, after naming, outside the possibility of naming. The bridge reveals itself as not just connection between realms, but the principle that allows realms to exist separately enough to need connection. Without the bridge, all would be one undifferentiated unity. With the bridge, diversity becomes possible. Relationship becomes necessary. Love becomes the force that holds things together while allowing them their beautiful separation. The Norn's fingers slow their weaving, not stopping, but approaching the stillness that is perfect motion. The pause between stitches where all possibilities exist simultaneously before one is chosen, before choice chooses itself, before the thread commits to its place in the pattern. In this almost stillness, the pattern reveals itself as temporary, provisional, one of infinite possible patterns, perfect in its imperfection, necessary in its arbitrariness, eternal in its momentariness. Summary comes not as conclusion, but as gathering, not as ending, but as recognition of the endlessness that has been present all along. We have journeyed through 9 realms to discover they are one realm. We have explored 3 wells to find they are one water. We have followed countless creatures to understand they are one creature. We have traced the cosmic seasons to see they are one season. We have crossed the bridge to learn we were always on both sides. We have watched the Norns weave to realize we are simultaneously thread, weaver, and pattern. The tree contains all of this, is all of this, transcends all of this. It is the question and the answer, the journey and the destination, the dreamer and the dream. It stands at the center that is everywhere, rooted in the depth that is also height, reaching toward the height that is also depth, breathing with the rhythm that creates time, bleeding the sap that becomes space, dreaming the dream that becomes existence, existence that dreams itself into tree. Return now, softly, gently, to the place where you began this journey, though beginning is revealed as illusion, though return is impossible because you never left, though place is meaningless in the placeless place where all places meet. The room around you, the bed beneath you, the air you breathe, all of it is Yggdrasil. All of it is the 9 realms. All of it is the cosmic tree dreaming itself into the specific form of your particular moment, your particular perspective, your particular participation in the eternal pattern that is always changing, always the same. 48. Your breathing is the tree's breathing, slow and deep and patient. Your heartbeat is the rhythm of the cosmic seasons, reliable and variable, predictable and surprising. Your thoughts are the creatures moving through the branches, browsing, gnawing, running, watching, always in motion, always at rest. Your dreams are the realms themselves, each one complete, each one partial, each one necessary for the whole that could not exist without its parts, parts that could not exist without the whole. The last words dissolve now into pure atmosphere, into the space between sleeping and waking, where all stories live, where all journeys begin and end, where the tree stands eternal, patient, breathing its slow breath that measures ages, that creates ages, that transcends ages. The map in your mind fades without disappearing, remains without insisting, exists without demanding attention, ready to reform whenever you need. To remember that you are not separate from the cosmos, but part of it. Not observing the tree, but being the tree. Not hearing the story, but telling it, living it, dreaming it into existence with every breath, every heartbeat, every moment of consciousness that bridges the gap between nothing and everything. Rest now in this knowledge that needs no knowing, this understanding that transcends understanding, this peace that comes from accepting mystery as the deepest truth, paradox as the clearest logic, story as the most honest fact. The tree holds you as it holds all things, in branches that are also roots, in roots that are also branches, in the eternal present that contains all pasts and futures, in the single moment that lasts forever, in the forever that exists completely in each single moment. Yggdrasil remembers. Yggdrasil endures. Yggdrasil waits. It remembers the first story and the last story and all the stories between. Though first and last are meaningless in the eternal middle, where all stories happen simultaneously. It endures through the cosmic seasons, through the rising and falling of worlds, through the birth and death of gods, through the endless variations of the pattern that is always new, always ancient, always becoming what it has always been. It waits with the patience of wood, of stone, of space itself, for the next story to be told, the next journey to begin, the next consciousness to discover that it is not separate from, but part of the great dreaming, the eternal becoming, the infinite story that tells itself through every finite story, including this one, including yours, including the one that continues even as these words fade into silence, into darkness, into the peaceful void where all possibilities wait to be born, to grow, to die, to be born again in the endless cycle that is not repetition but renewal, not prison but promise, not fate but the freedom that comes from understanding that you are the tree. The tree is you, and all of existence is the dream you dream together, forever and for the first time, always and never. In the eternal now where these words finally, gently, peacefully